Hi, welcome to the Happy Talents YouTube channel. This is Eva, and today I'll be reading my blog post, Why I Love the 80-20 Rule of Travel. You know some of my favorite places to visit? The ones where, when people hear you speaking English, they don't rush over to sell you something. They rush over to ask you if you're from California, if you've ever met George Bush, or even if you own guns. I love visiting places where fathers ask you to come to their house for dinner and practice English with their children, and places where young monks invite you to visit their monastery to play ping pong and cook. One great rule of travel is to say yes, though I do have my limits. When I happened upon a wedding party while visiting a Lao Hill tribe, and the village elders invited me to sit with them and drink a bowl of blood, I politely declined, then disturbed, walked smack into a hanging meat carcass. But generally, saying yes leads to the most authentic and memorable adventures. What would you rather do? Visit yet another temple, or get a free personal tour of a Myanmar school where you interact with students who are eager to practice speaking English with you? Obviously the latter, but here's the thing. As important and meaningful as it is to ask these children about their dreams and their experiences, they also want to hear about yours, and you should tell them. They're not animals in a zoo. They're not there to be gawked at. They're people. People who are genuinely curious about you. Is your thing cultural absorption, or is it cultural exchange? As I wrote in Sorry But No, Not Every Part of Every Culture Deserves My Respect, I believe in cultural exchange. One piece of advice that changed my life was to follow the 80-20 rule. Consume 80% of the time, create 20% of the time. That's why I started this blog. But I've realized that travel should also follow the 80-20 rule. You absorb, participate, listen, and learn 80% of the time. But in order for this to be a true cultural exchange, you need to give back 20% of the time. Whether delighting children in Laos with tales of lobster diving in California, teaching my surf buddies in Malaysia how to swing dance, or explaining the American electoral college system to a Swedish expat, I think it's meaningful to share and not just take. Give knowledge, give a story, a lesson, an experience. Show and tell what it's like to be you, because otherwise, you're just being selfish. There are those who think that this mentality is somehow disrespectful or rude, which I think is extremely condescending. Do you think you know better than these locals what conversations and cultural influence they should be allowed to participate in? And do you really think that even if we don't interact directly, I should conform to certain standards of dress or behavior just because it's respectful? To use another example from Sorry But No, Not Every Part of Every Culture Deserves My Respect, the surfer bros at Elsewhere Surf Camp, which I meant to go to for a week, but I definitely stayed for 2, told me that I should cover up while walking to the beach, a 3-minute walk down the road. And I'm like, no. I don't believe that all Sri Lankan men are sexual predators. I don't think it's reasonable to ask me to leave my belongings on the beach, where they will almost certainly be stolen when I surf. And I don't think it's going to be the end of the world if Sri Lankans see me in bikini bottoms. And really, is it so horrible for women, men, and children to see a confident, independent Western woman walking alone down the street with a surfboard and a bikini? Would it be better if they just had no idea what it was like in another part of the world? Or if their only representations of Western women came from porn and Bollywood? I don't travel so I can be the passive recipient of another culture. I travel to experience truly meaningful exchange, in which both parties have the opportunity to gain perspective, learn, and grow. Because once again, locals aren't zoo animals to be gawked at. They're human beings to be interacted with. And when you see them that way, magic happens. For example, here's a picture of some awesome kids I met in Nepali, Myanmar. I met them while I was coming out of the water after a low-tide freediving session. A young Burmese boy with a gap-toothed grin ran my way, gesticulating between my gear and the Sea of Bengal. I wasn't wild about letting a stranger put my snorkel in his mouth, but his smile was irresistible. He placed the mask over his face, and it immediately dropped onto his shoulders. I knelt to tighten the strap. Once it was snug, he dove through a small set of waves. Well, small to me, but I've got 3 feet on him. and into the sea. Every few minutes, he lifted his head and shouted words I could only understand from the accompanying charades. A crab, a big fish, another big fish, a turtle. I've never seen anyone this excited about anything, I thought to myself. And I'm pretty sure that, given the right support, this child could be a genius at marine biology, or a world expert on climate change. Given the right support being the key phrase. Obviously, I can't provide that. But maybe I can play some tiny part in helping a child whose beaches look like this, just 100 meters down from where the tourists stay, love the ocean and explore the underwater world, perhaps for the first time. I've found that lots of kids in developing countries have never seen what's under the water. Totally sad. I needed a new freediving mask anyway. That said, as an aside, I never ever give money to child beggars and I never ever buy anything from them. It's one of the worst things you can do while traveling. I mean, we've all seen Slumdog Millionaire, right? So, go. Immerse yourself in another culture. Visit the homes where families hand-roll thousands of cigarettes per day and build entire bamboo walls in just minutes. It's incredibly cool, especially when you have a guide or translator who can explain some of the nuances to you. But make sure you're leaving something positive behind too. Because 80-20. Am I right? Okay, great. That's it. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter @TheHappyTalent, and check out my blog for a new post. Thanks!